Britain's Strongest Man finished up just last night, and what an interesting competition that was. It scuppered everyone's predictions. If anyone had that top three written down in that order, I would call you a liar, because no one expected that to happen. I mean, so many pullouts, so many just weird things that happened. It was a really strange show, but nonetheless, it was very entertaining, and I'm super glad to see a lot of the newer faces doing really, really well and proving why they should be there as some of the best in Britain. It is such an interesting competition. I've got lots of thoughts as we go event by event. So without further ado, sit back, relax. We are about to go through event by event, Britain's Strongest Man, and give my thoughts. If you are new here, then make sure you go down below and click subscribe. I do coverage of every pro strongman show, and at least I will do. This year, I will be giving my thoughts on every single one, discussions surrounding the pro scene. I do talks every single Friday about a given topic. That doesn't have to be pro strongman, but a lot of the time it is. But also on top of that, 2 times a week, I do my own strongman training here in this garage gym. I'm currently in prep for Oxfordshire's Strongest Man, and I am working my way up from complete novice on this channel to a somewhat decent amateur where I am now, and we will see where this goes. So if that sounds like something that is interesting to you, go and check out all of those other videos. But you are here for Britain's Strongest Man, so that is exactly what we will be discussing just now. So first things first, I will get out of the way the live stream issues that people were having. I couldn't watch it live, unfortunately, so I watched it on catch up as soon as I got back in, and the live stream replay was absolutely fine. But as I understand, for everyone watching live, the live stream was stuttering, freezing, and then all out died during the stones, which is obviously not a good thing. The Giants live streams are usually fantastic, but it was clear that the Britain's Strongest Man one last night was not up to scratch. So hopefully it was just a technical difficulty and it wasn't anyone's fault or anything. And by Europe's Strongest Man, we can be back to it. But yeah, Britain's Strongest Man, what a show. I mean, a lot of people were saying they were quite underwhelmed by the show, but hey, people pulling out and people getting injured, that's strongman. What was really interesting to me is how close it was for a battle towards the top end of the podium, and close between people you might not expect. It was a really fun show. I really, really enjoyed it. And I mean, come on, it was not how anyone could have predicted it went. So surely that is worth being entertained. I know people's favourites might not have done so well. Luke Richardson, Adam Bishop. But I know a lot of people's favourite, no matter what you think of him as a man and as a person, Luke Stoltman came in form, came in lean, and he did fantastically. He did exactly what he needed to do every single event to secure that win. And as I said, no matter what you think of him as a person, as a man, but as a strong man last night, he was pretty damn good. But enough general waffling for Britain's Strongest Man. It is time that we now dive in and go event by event. A really fun set of events, I thought, tonight, and my God, was it brutal. I mean, it looked like a very, very brutal comp, and I mean, nothing was more brutal than that first event, so let's dive right into it. So, first up, we had the Sandbag steeplechase with 3 150-kilo bags. Now, this was a brilliant event, although it was an absolute killer. Usually with steeplechase, we see 2 bags for 4 total pickups, and people doing fairly okay. The 3rd bag in this series caused people to start dropping like flies. It was brutal. A lot of people just didn't have the conditioning to get it done. One man that did was Paddy Haynes, absolutely flew down that course, getting a very, very solid time and taking the event win. 2 people who also did fairly good are Luke Stoltman, Shane Flowers. These 2 are just fairly consistent all night, did what they needed to do, and this event was no different. And then the big surprise on this event for people was Luke Richardson just completely fumbling the second pickup of that 3rd bag. And you could tell with Luke something was wrong, and it was absolutely gutting to see him just go out like that on the first event. Luckily, nothing tore, nothing snapped. It was just passing out and was advised to pull out. So fingers crossed Luke Richardson can remain healthy and in good nick and come back to either Europe's Strongest Man or World's Strongest Man and do something better there. Because I know for Luke, he is going to be absolutely gutted after that Sandbag performance. Some more people that were just generally solid at this Sandbag was Ben Glasscock, Andy Flynn, both guys who we thought would do quite well at the Sandbag. Just rock solid, doing decent, but you could see that this event was what was killing people off. People were huffing, people were puffing. A lot of people failed to finish that last bag. I can't remember off the top of my head if Adam Bishop did or not, but he was significantly slower and steadier than a lot of the other people just because of that Achilles tear, not going flat out. But you could see, like, for the bigger guys like Sean Gillen, just absolutely gassing out that third bag. A lot of people struggling on that third bag. But it certainly made for an exciting event because I think 2 bags becomes a bit of a foot race. That third bag really separated the men from the boys and the people who had good conditioning. And I think it was a good change, even though it did kill quite a lot of people off, unfortunately. But I just think people needed to be more prepared. But hey, that's Strongman. Another notable thing that happened on this event was Andy Black getting the easiest payday of his life. Honestly, I was a bit dubious when they invited Andy Black as Graham Hicks' replacement, just because I know he had a long time of training, sort of did Scotland's Strongest Man and came second. And yeah, Andy Black was not ready to come back to Britain's Strongest Man. He did one event, pulled out, easiest payday of his life. Hopefully it wasn't any sort of injury, but honestly it didn't seem like it. Yeah, justice for Rory O'Hagan there. He should have been there. And he tied on points with Sean Gillen. He's younger, he's much more athletic. The events probably would have suited him more with how brutal the show was. So, yeah, that was a bit of a mess up there on the Giants live team behalf. But honestly, Andy Black came second at a qualifier. Rory came second at a qualifier. He should have been there. But it is what it is. I hope Andy's all right. I don't hate the guy. I just think, get your bag. But it's a bit of a shame when you see someone come in, do one event, and then instantly pull out. So then event number 2 was the deadlift ladder. And now originally this was up to 400 kilos. And I think it was the right decision to drop it back down to the 380, especially after that Sandbag. People were wobbly. People were starting to die off. But the deadlift ladder was, of course, won by Adam Bishop with just an effortless looking set of 5 there. It was just ridiculous how easy he makes that look. Shane Flowers putting in another just very solid performance, sort of getting that almost Mitch Hooper treatment of just coming top couple on every single event and doing fairly well with it. Luke Stoltman did what he needed to do. He did enough bars just to secure him some good, solid points. Now, Paddy flew through the first 4 bars and then took a little bit of time to set up on the 5th. And now, in hindsight, if he had gone faster on the 5th and managed to grind it out a bit quicker and got second on that event, things could have been different. But at this point in the competition, Paddy was leading and he was just trying to get a good, solid run in on the bars, which, is the right thing to do at that point in the comp with obviously a weakness coming up, maybe pushing a bit harder, but he still came 3rd on the event. I can't really give him much more advice than that. He did very, very well. Sean Gillen was very solid on the deadlift. Gav was very solid on the deadlift. We sort of expected it from these guys, just a nice, solid run. Maybe not the quickest, just nice and solid. And then there were a few guys there, the Bens, the Andys, Chris Beetham, Matt Diamond, who were all in the lower end of the bars, sort of 1 to 4 bars. And you could tell the Sandbag was getting to a few of them. The pace of the show was getting to a few of them. But yeah, it's a Giants live. It's going to be hard. It's going to be heavy. Those people who have the conditioning, have the experience, and that was what we really saw this competition is Luke Stoltman having the most experience, knew when to pace himself and knew when to push. You could tell he was just very, very professional as an athlete last night. But yeah, I really enjoy a deadlift ladder, to be honest. I think it's one of the more entertaining form of deadlifts at a competition. Honestly, I like any deadlift, but a deadlift ladder is really exciting for me over the just a deadlift for reps. I think Shane Flowers going with the sort of shorter VersaGrip style straps was a fantastic choice. It allowed him to be solid, allowed him to be quick. Obviously, no figure eights on the deadlift ladder this year, which for me would be my opportune choice because I'm really quick at putting figure eights on, and I know Adam Bishop is as well. But it didn't seem to bother Bish, and everyone else was sort of taking their time strapping up a bit. But after that Sandbag, there's only so quick you can go. So the next event then was the duck walk into the farmers. This was the event that I was looking forward to most because I love a duck walk, and everyone was very, very solid on the duck walk. But it was the farmers that were taking a few people out. You could tell this was where people's legs were really starting to buckle and get a bit wobbly. Paddy, in particular, someone who was touted to win this event with his supreme grip and fast moving, you could just see that in the hips and in the legs, those massive wide farmers bashing into them. Your legs are going to be wobbly after those first two events, and that's just what happened with Paddy. You weren't expecting him to go down on the farmers, but he still got a decent enough time on that event as well. Andy Flynn put in an absolute flyer. Absolutely, yeah, just sending it down the course, to be honest, coming away with an event win. This was going to be a good event for Andy, and I'm really glad that he managed to bring it back after the deadlift and do a really, really fantastic performance. Ben Glasscock was solid. Luke Stoltman was solid again. Luke Stoltman coming in with that just solid event by event, just doing exactly what he needs to do to stay at the top of the table. Just really solid. Luke, as an athlete, just looked really ridiculously professional last night. Again, as I've said, whatever you say about the whole Luke Stoltman stuff, you can't deny that last night at Britain's Strongest Man, he was in top shape. Gav was just, again, very solid. Gav, this comp was interesting because he was just sort of very solid every event. He got through the competition pretty fine. He was just sort of mid-table every single event. He wasn't pushing quite for the podium like he has been at previous Britain's Strongest Man competitions, but he was just very solid, and he looked to be enjoying it. So I'm glad Gav is just sort of in there putting in solid performances, and hopefully he's found that love of strongman again. And probably my highlight on this event was Adam Bishop and Shane Flowers just having a very good race. They were very close. Unfortunately, I think Adam Bishop tore his hand up on this event, got the Mitchell Hooper treatment here, and unfortunately had to pull out after this event. Bish was just looking quite solid, but I think for Bish, the win was getting a bit out of reach, and with a torn hand, with log press for reps and stones coming up next, you just don't want to be doing log clean with a torn hand or putting tacky in it and doing stones. So I think Adam, his call to pull out was probably a good one. I'm not sure if it's going to favour him getting a World's Strongest Man invite. I'm sure he probably will do anyway because it's Adam Bishop. But yeah, perhaps if he was Mitchell Hooper, he would have kept going because Mitch is an absolute nutcase like at World's Strongest Man. But I think it was the right decision for Bish. But yeah, with Bish and Richardson out of the competition, this made for a very interesting Britain's Strongest Man because everyone had at least Richardson up on the podium and Bish very close to it because they're the staple names. They're the names you know. Luke Stoltman was doing his thing. Shane Flowers was doing very well. But the podium fight was between Ben Glasscock, Andy Flynn, and Paddy Haynes. I mean, what? No one expected that to be the podium fight. Like, genuinely, no one really did they? They were expecting the podium to be the two Lukes and then Adam, Shane, or possibly Paddy. No one had Ben's name up there. No one had Andy's name too far up there either. So it's so good to see these newer guys on Giants Live performing solid, especially Andy coming in and back-to-back Giants Lives at the Giants Live Classic in the Royal Albert Hall and Britain's Strongest Man now just putting in insanely just solid performances. But anyway, log press up next. So 160 log for reps. This is where things unfortunately went tits up for Paddy. I know, having seen some of his training and speaking to Paddy personally, that he was confident he would get at least one rep here, having done a few reps in training, and it's just a shame. Obviously, by this point in the competition, everyone's legs looked fucked on this log, and no one had the explosive power with their legs. It was the big, strong pressers who were able to go with this log. It was just, yeah, the moving of the sandbag, the deadlift, and the duck walk into farmers, everyone's legs were just cramping. They were fried. They were ridiculous. And Paddy is someone who gets a hell of a lot out of his legs. So with wobbly legs, it was a tough ask to get this log. He got so close to the one rep and just lost it and almost dropped it on the back of his head, which was pretty sketchy. But I know he won't be too pleased with that. But yeah, as I said, when your legs go, they just go. But there are a lot of people who were just very solid on this log. Shane was very solid. Gav was very solid. Sean Gillen was very solid. These sort of people like Gav and Sean, we sort of expected to be solid, decent log presses here. Shane doing what he needs to do, staying just near the top, getting a few good reps. But two people who did fantastically well on this log was Ben Glasscock and Andy Flynn, both getting 4 reps, I believe. And Andy Flynn's fourth was an absolute buzzer beater. So I'm so happy for both of them that they just got some really solid reps on that log. I'm so pleased for both of them that they both did very, very well at this competition. They were really cementing themselves at deserving at being at Britain's Strongest Man. And then Luke Stoltman took the comfy win on the log. I mean, I think we sort of expected this from Luke. He's a phenomenal log presser. He looked the most fresh. He's the most professional there. Most experienced, and yeah, he just got 5 solid reps, more in the tank, doing what he needed to do to take the event win. So by this point, it was pretty made up that I think Luke Stoltman was going to win, and then the podium battle was obviously Shane Flowers, Andy Finn, Ben Glasscock, and Paddy Haynes hanging on there. As we know, Paddy's a very, very good stone lifter, but a 0 on the log is probably what cost him the podium in this competition. If Paddy had just got 1 rep on that log, or not quite drop the farmers on the farmers walk, there's so many things that Paddy could have done to edge onto the podium, but I know Paddy won't be dwelling too much on that. He'll just be hungry for the next opportunity. And if I were Paddy, I'd start seriously training for Worlds, because half a point off the podium, I know that a lot of Americans and people around the world don't agree with this, but Worlds need a Brit in every group and a Brit reserve. And with Luke Richardson qualified, Shane Flowers qualified, Andy Flynn qualified, and then Luke Stoltman and Tom Stoltman going, that seems like our British lineup for 5 groups. Obviously, is it 5 groups? I can never remember. I think so, because it's a reduced lineup as well. So if you're looking for a Brit reserve at the minute, you might have an Adam Bishop as a Brit reserve, but you wouldn't reserve Bish, would you? So I don't know. It's hard to tell, but there's a very, very, very good chance after this Britain's Strongest Man performance that Paddy Haynes is at least the reserve for World's Strongest Man on the Britain side. So if I were Paddy, I'd just start keeping that in the back of your mind. But I really hope Paddy gets another opportunity at another Giants Live this year, because he has every ounce of ability to do really, really well. Obviously, the pressing is a major issue, and he's working at that. And on a different date, that 160 would have gone up for at least 1 rep, and we'd be talking a different story. But I really hope he gets a chance at maybe Europe's Strongest Man, or again at the Strongman Open, or something later in the year. I'd love to see Paddy at the World Deadlift Champs, just to see what he can pull with a really long, solid prep now. Obviously, I'm a big Paddy fan. I'm really good mates with the guy, and I'm going to sing his praises. But we still have one more event to go through. So, as is a pretty common staple in Strongman, it was the Atlas Stones to finish off. A stone run up to 200, the heavy set, which should now just be the set. They should never go back to the lighter set. And it was actually pretty exciting for the Stones. I know the live stream had issues, but watching it back, it was a pretty good stone run set. Obviously, Paddy coming out first, having lost the log, absolutely blitzed it, ended up winning the event. He just did fantastically well at the Stones, and you could see how much that meant to him, finishing off with a bag. Paddy did so well in this competition. He won 2 events, then a 3rd and a 4th place, and obviously 0 on the log. That's a pretty good resume to have coming out of Britain's Strongest Man. Gav was just very, very, very solid. Sean Gillen was solid up until 4, and then it seemed like on the 5th he had some form of pull or cramp or something, which held him back a bit. Ben Glasscock, I'm so pleased for Ben on these stones. You could see he was struggling after the 3rd one a bit, and then somehow mustered the energy to not only get the 4th, but get a buzzer beater 5th on the stones as well. I'm so pleased for Ben. That is a good ending that you want to get on those stones. Andy Flynn, very, very solid run. I think this was what cemented Andy on the podium. Just a very, very good stone run. Shane, again, did exactly what he needed to do. Shane and Luke's heat was very, very exciting. It was a buzzer beater right down to the end, where Luke did exactly what he needed to do to cement the win. Just a very solid stone run. And then Shane got in there and pipped Luke on the stones just a bit. It was literally down to that last stone again, but it wasn't enough. Obviously, Luke had already won by this point pretty much, but it left us with a podium of Luke Stoltman, Shane Flowers, and Andy Flynn, which is not a podium I expected, but it is a podium I am very, very pleased about. Obviously, Luke Stoltman was the most professional, the most experienced athlete there. He put in a good showing and he won Britain's Strongest Man finally. So I know Luke will be very pleased with that, and a lot of Luke fans will be pretty pleased with that as well. So congratulations, Luke. It was clear that you put in the work and just came in shape for this one. Shane Flowers getting second. I am so happy for Shane. Obviously, the Magnus for Magnuson Classic was Shane's first competition back from his bicep tear. You can tell that he was nervy. You can tell that he wasn't sure if he was ready to get back into it. And this competition, Britain's Strongest Man, has now put all that to bed. He came second. He was solid. He was convincing. He is back to the Shane Flowers that we know and love. So hopefully he could put back to bed the bicep issues now and really focus in now on coming into World's Strongest Man in good shape. And then the thing that made me happiest above all else was seeing Andy Flynn on the podium. I have a lot of time for Andy Flynn. I respect him massively as a competitor. He follows Strongman in the same way that I do, where I just do it for the absolute love of the game. I absolutely love it. I love competing. I really enjoy it. And Andy Flynn's the exact same. You can see he's just enjoying every second of it and getting on the podium, securing his World's Strongest Man invite. I just know Andy Flynn is punching the air right now. You can't get much better than that, can it? I really, really hope we see Andy Flynn at World's Strongest Man and doing at least very decently in the groups. I mean, what an experience for Andy. I am so happy for him. And then just half a point off the podium, we had Paddy Haynes down in fourth. And I mean, I predicted Paddy fifth. He's proved me wrong. He's raised it up to fourth, and he was in a whisker of the podium. Any little thing changed and he'd be on that podium. And I know Paddy, and I think that I haven't spoken to him yet, but I think that he'll be coming away from this Britain's Strongest Man really happy with his performance in a lot of the events. And I mean, you could tell in his interviews with Neil, his interviews with Eddie, he was just having the best time of his life out there. He was really enjoying it. And to end on that stone run must have been such a high. So I'm really, genuinely, really happy for Paddy. He did fantastically well. Even if the log didn't go his way, he did so well. He proved to everyone that he deserves to be at this level in Britain. If he can just get the log to be consistent, then we're looking at a much more dangerous Paddy Haynes. And then in fifth, again, I don't think anyone expected Ben Glasscock to be taking fifth over the likes of Adam Bishop, Gav Bilton, Sean Gillen. Having Ben in fifth on his first time out at Britain's Strongest Man, where, need I remind you, when Ben was announced as the replacement for Kane Francis, a lot of people were questioning Ben's ability and questioning why Ben would be invited over, say, a Paul Smith or someone else like that. And let me tell you now that Ben Glasscock put in the performance of his lifetime yesterday, was super solid across the board, and he is now the fifth strongest man in Britain. So that must feel really good for Ben. Again, I've met Ben, lovely, lovely guy, in it for the love of the game, and it's just so good to see him do well. And that concludes our Britain's Strongest Man thoughts and recap there. What an interesting show. I know no one had it going down like that, and I know a lot of people are very disappointed to see Luke Richardson pull out after the first event. And I think for Luke, this is the right call. If you're not going to be 100% and you're going to be passing out after the first event, why risk any further injury on the deadlift, considering the last thing he tore was his hamstring? A deadlift ladder while you're in that shape is just not smart. So very, very good choice there for Luke to listen to the audience and pull out. He's already secured his World's Strongest Man invite. But yeah, it's a shame because everyone had Luke toted to win this event, and I know Luke's going to be more gutted than anyone else. So I just hope he's doing well. I hope he gets back to it and can get into World's Strongest Man healthy. But yeah, I know a lot of people were actually quite underwhelmed by Britain's Strongest Man this year, but that was just because a lot of the favourites didn't do as well as people expected. And by the favourites, I mean the people's favourites, the people that people have heard of before, especially overseas, like the Gav Biltons, the Adam Bishops, the Luke Richardsons. But the new crop of the British guys who I follow quite closely, the Andy Flynn, the Ben Glasscock, the Paddy Haynes, doing so well in this competition is what sold it for me. I really enjoyed it. I'm so pleased to see them all do well. And yeah, the live stream issues were what it was. but next time I'm sure they'll have it fixed. It was just another very solid Giants Live. So that is it for Britain's Strongest Man, my thoughts and recap. If you enjoyed, let me know in the comments below all of the upsets, all of the different things that you guys thought that I might not have mentioned in today. I'm sure there are some performances that I've not mentioned that surprised you guys, so please go down below, let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts on all the athletes, all the performances, everything. Let's just have a big discussion down below. But if you enjoyed this video and enjoyed me sharing my thoughts, be sure to leave a like on this video, share it around to other Strongman fans, and of course, if you're new here, subscribe so you can stay in the loop for whenever I talk about the pro strongman scene. We do talks every single Friday about either pro strongman, strongman training, just any topics you want me to talk about. And as I mentioned, we also do our own training. So this is the channel for all things strongman. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one, where hopefully we will be watching the Arnolds